Okay. Hi, everyone. Hi there. I'm just giving it a minute for everybody to join. No pressure, Hans. We've got lots of people joining, seeing names that seem to be from everywhere all over the world. So let's not mess this one up. Awesome. Well, I think we'll get started. Thank you to everybody joining. So there's still some names coming through there. I'm excited for today's webinar. It's the 4th that Hans and I are doing this year. I believe, right? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we've got a 5th one planned also in October. So for those of you that I haven't met, I'm Taryn. I'm the marketing manager here at Ancona. We are a globally operating training, consulting, and technology implementation firm, mostly in the automotive sector, manufacturing sector, but not exclusively. Actually, Hans, I don't know if you know, today marks my 2 years with Ancona. Exactly. That means 2 years I've been putting up with you. So I reckon I deserve a gin when we're done for the day today. I would like to say it's been a fantastic 2 years at Ancona already, and here's to many more. So what we do to decide how to come up with the topics for the webinars is we analyze FAQs that come through to us, be it in terms of job specs or general actual FAQs. And something we're asked for very often, particularly with our consulting arm, is assistance with training needs analysis for organizations. And we thought for today, yes, we're going to focus on training needs analysis, but we wanted to also expand the topic a little bit more to cover identifying, gaining, and maintaining organizational knowledge. So I'm very happy to have Hans on the line. I'm happy to have him home in South Africa for a change as well. Thank you, Hans, for joining us.
Thanks, Taryn, and hello, everybody out there.
So Hans, you were telling me, how many years is it you've been in the training and auditing sphere? 25 years? Plus just a few. In all those years, you know, we understand, everybody, I think, high level gets the importance of education, training, and development of human capital. But why is there an issue out there? What are the issues out there? I mean, if it's such an obvious thing that training and development is important.
Well, Taryn, first of all, I'm not really surprised that this topic found its way into your top 10 list FAQs. No, I would agree with you. I don't think anybody will dispute that education is a driving force to run successful businesses and successful economies around the world. But unfortunately, nowadays, it's no longer enough to do the right things. We also have to do the things right. And if I just look back in the last 25 years of doing audits around the world, there have been several topics always popping up in and around the requirements of of education, training and development. And we do certainly nearly every bit identify lack of competence in a variety of different areas in the organization, which pulls up the question as to why is it that way? So one of the reasons, or key reasons, definitely is that organizations do find it difficult to really identify required competences and learning units needed for each and every job post. That's just too generic out there. That's one of the big reasons.
It sounds a bit freestyling, though, to me. You're saying the training and development isn't really focused on core competencies as it relates to a role or an organization.
Well, Taryn, look, if we understand that an HR manager or somebody in the HR department that calls himself a process owner, if that individual is responsible to provide competent resources in all the areas of the organization where demand is coming from, if we can agree to that, and an HR manager is not disputing that, I am the process owner for this, to provide competent people in all the areas of the organization. But let me tell you this, at least 9 out of 10 HR, and this is not a complaint, I just want to provide a way out of it, a solution, because I think it's running the wrong way. At least 9 out of 10 HR responsible persons have to engage with all the department heads in the organization once per annum to gather training needs. 9 out of 10. And I asked you, why is that? Does the process owner not know what required competences the people need? Apparently not. And they will say, yeah, but how would I know? The department head must know. And here comes the crux. The department head also doesn't know the whole game of required learning units, because he focuses very, very stringently on the work-related competencies. That's what he's covering. But what happens with soft skills? What happens with the IATF or the ISO 9001, which is your business operating system and the requirements that come along with that? So they don't put that really in the focus points. And if you look into the majority of the documents where you find required competences, you would find in a job description. Mm. And all I'm saying is, what you get to read there in the majority of all the cases is just not precise enough to also support an HR responsible to find the appropriate and correct learning units or training providers, if you want to call it that. It's just too generic. So we're having the fact that the process owner, HR, so to speak, that signs responsible to provide that, does not know what are the required competences throughout the organization for every job post in the organization. So that process owner becomes now a toothless tiger. He is too much depending on the departments once per year to collect and gather all the training needs. And I can tell you that from an experience. Training is not on everybody's short list that's running a department. Training is consequently one of the first things that gets cut down in tough times that we are in right now. But does that mean that the training need also disappears? Very unlikely. But now the process owners cannot manage. And I think this is the systematic approach that basically the IATF and ISO 9001 is talking about, from just collecting individual feedbacks to a systematic approach that empowers now the process owners within the HR department to proactively trigger the departments and say, hey, what's going on here? We have this and that shortages here still in your area. That's the issue that I'm seeing. And but we can have a look at if I want to share a presentation. This is just one thing. In and around training, there's a variety of observations that we make during audits and also around the world, if you want to call it that. And to give you a little bit of a you could complete this, but these are relevant ones. Training and qualification basically skipped or significantly reduced, if you want to call it that, when the budget is low, when the times are tough. Right now, this is what we talked about: required competences not sufficiently identified, too generic and incomplete in most of the cases, and that's why HR just can't take control of their ownership. So HR staff not supported when finding the correct training offered, with just too generic requirements about what does a department head or other process owners require for the people. So the support is often very, very insufficient. So they start struggling. No strategic process in place to identify new trends. What if we are in ever-changing times and industry sector? If I want to just give you a practical example, in 2016, when the latest IATF came on the market, okay, there were two significant new changes. One was enterprise risk management. One was the implementation of process owners. So somebody at that stage should have picked up now and said, do we have sufficient qualification and competence to run an enterprise risk management system, not only for the manufacturing processes, because that's what we've done with the FMEA ever since, but also in every support process. So how do you effectively analyze the risk in support processes? And the question should have been, I said, no, we don't have the competence in-house. But it wasn't picked up. So not a strategic part of, and also with process owners. Process owners, department heads became now also process owners, and I think we had a webinar about this as well. Process management, we're still living in silos too much, not really understanding and applying process management or the process approach, which is a competence that is still today missing. We haven't picked that up. So there's no strategic process to see the trends coming towards us. And in the newest times, what about TSACs? What about ISO 27000 for information security, cybersecurity? And I can see it already again, it's too late. We haven't seen it coming, although the indicators have been out there to see it coming. Mm-hmm. It's often stipulated in the customer requirements already. And now we start running. So we're always chasing the ball, and we're not ahead of the game in most of the cases. So there's no strategic process to pick up new trends that's coming out there or requirements. HR relying on department heads when identifying those training needs, and I think I did elaborate on that. Implementation of learned topics not controlled. For my liking, friends, for my liking, one of the biggest shortfall in the whole training industry. Delegates come to a training academy or they just consume any sort of different training. Who takes care of the effective implementation, what these people learn in an academy or in a training classroom in the organization to make the organization the beneficiary because they pay for the training? That is, to me, is one of the biggest shortfalls we have right now. There is no sufficient control as to how we implement learned training content effectively in the organization.
So it's actually a benefit, not just a box ticking exercise.
Exactly. And I remember some years ago, we've provided that for a period of a year everybody that came to our training, academy for a training, we came on site after a certain period of time, after implementation should have been done, free of charge. We didn't charge. We don't report and said, people, you send us the people to the academy, but there's no throughput. It's not effectively implemented. And that's basically why you send people to training. So the verification of this effectiveness, which is the effective implementation, is a huge shortfall. Because people come back to the day-to-day business, and then we have other things to do, other priorities, and then the knowledge is fading away, and then it's not implemented as to how it should have been implemented.
Yeah.
You look at this chart, there's a variety of shortfall because it's a complex process. It's a complex process to gain knowledge, but also to effectively implement, which is a tricky process. And in history, I must tell you, it's just always coming with shortfalls and non-conformity. So just to do the training and send people to training is one thing. But then the job basically starts to effectively implement that. And one of the reasons is where we're starting to really identify for every job post in the organization, not only what are the competence fields, what are the learning units? Because if you say you must be experienced in engineering, what does that mean, engineering? Mm-hmm. Rocket engineering? Is it industrial engineering? Is it mechanical engineering? Engineering is a monster. So how do you break that down to learning units? That's the key. Supports HR with finding the right training courses, okay, and gets the organization a clear vision and picture of as to what are the required competencies and learning units.
I don't know if I'm crossing lines here though, but this should actually even apply those job specs from recruitment phase as well. So, you're recruiting the correct person. Surely the kind of learning units and competencies and job spec all go hand in hand from step one.
Absolutely. And it's in the same way incomplete as internally, by the way. Mm. That's why you always have this gap. But let's say if you talk about automotive industry, but this is not just for automotive industry. The industry sector in general is hugely complex. With so many statutory, regulatory standards, customer requirements, international standards for the branch. Internal, it's hugely complex. So you never get Mr. or Mrs. Right from the labor market ready to go. Yeah. Consequently, it is hugely important to really nail it down to those learning units of competence somebody needs if he wants to take a specific job post within my organization. Mm. And I think, yeah. Good.
Isn't so with those learning units, so it sounds to me like we really need to re-engineer the whole process, how we think about these things. And I mean, who should be involved in determining all of these?
That's a very good question, Karen. And I'll tell you something. If you take people by side and said, actually, who is part of this game to identify all learning units and competence fields that a job post needs within the organization? And again, let's say 8 out of 10 will say this is the responsibility of the department head. Totally disagree with, and they show it's not going to fly. It's not going to work. They are complete when it comes to the job-related competences they need. Okay, if you production work, it needs to be welding or riveting or machining or whatever the thing may be. But look at the admin side and the white collar side. Look at a process engineer, a quality engineer, or a project manager. The diversity of the skills that a project manager should actually carry is quite astonishing. All right. So they usually come from the sales or from the engineering areas, and now you must have project management. But it's not far, and I think we also have a little bit of a breakdown of that. So and one needs to understand, and this is why management systems don't work, because the necessary competences you need to drive within this framework of your ITF or ISO 9000, whatever system is, which is your business operating system. It's not your quality department system, your business operating system that covers each and every unit and department of the organization. What are the requirements from these standards, and how does a department head consider that? He doesn't. He does not. Consequently, they're dealing with their job-related competences, but the rest from the framework, this is where we have quality from. And they're going to spoon feed and babysit us for every audit and rescue the world for everybody, simply because the necessary competences and learning units from that standard are not incorporated into the job function. That never pops up as a training. And you will see this later. And this is what I say, guys. Don't do it HR by themselves. They wouldn't do it. Don't do it department heads by themselves. It won't work. Don't do it HR and department by themselves. Better, but still doesn't work. You got to bring in the management system reps, the quality guys, department head, quality, and HR. It's a team approach to really, and you will understand, and I'll show you this extract of how that should be done, to how many more learning units you actually have. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to do that, so this is what I would like to suggest. The department head takes care of the job-related skills that are required for this job. That's what he's hugely, highly capable for, but it's not enough. HR team should bring in all the soft skills and management skills, because on the white collar, especially in the white collar, you also have managers and process owners, which is managerial skills, emotional intelligence. And the QMS brings in the framework of the business system that you're operating in, including customer-specific requirements and legal requirements and QMS documentation internally. And you will see when you break it down to the learning units, how comprehensive that gets. And the good thing is you don't do this again and again and again when you hire a new process engineer or quality engineer. You set this for every job post once, and then you just review if something really new comes in. So it's a once-off effort you should put in. And these are basically, this is just an extract, guys. It just should show you what the department head, in this particular case for a project manager, what the department head, what HR and the QMS rep actually identify as certain competence fields that this person as a project manager should have. And here's a list of what they should do. And of course, they deal with the project management and the time management and the project planning. So everything that is job related, they will cover from their side. But is that enough? Of course not. So HR will then take care of certain learning units that is around problem-solving skills, communication skills, leadership skills, soft skills, if you want to call it that. And QMS will actually identify the framework of your ISO or IATF, wherever you're coming from, with customer-specific requirements, with risk management, process owner roles and responsibilities, which are still not clear today. Process management, silos, everywhere you go. There's no process approach. Okay? And so if I call this then competence fields, that competence fields you now need to break down in certain learning units, because you cannot send your HR staff and team away and said, we need project management, problem solving. Problem solving, guys, is a massive topic. And they need support to really get to the right trainings and training content. So the specification must be a lot clearer to them. So you basically break those competence fields that you've gathered in the previous one into learning units to be very precise as to what is it actually. A global AD report, which project manager has to do not only in serial, but also in projects already. Maybe a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt qualification, or the 7 quality tools. So those are specific learning tools for which you can gather also training units. For project management, that's already dealing with specific customer-specific requirements for certain customers that you might have. And those are precise and specific learning units HR can specifically request. The rest is just too generic, okay? And customer-specific requirements that comes from the quality guys that the engineering manager would have never completely would have identified for a project manager. There comes all this customer-specific requirements in there. And as you can see now, you are breaking down all these competence fields into learning units. And so everybody from this team approach, really breaking it down to make it a comprehensive identification. And the reason, folks, why we see so much lack of competence in core tool management, in customer-specific requirements, not so much in the core competence of their jobs, but in the surroundings of the framework of the IATF, is becoming because of the required competence fields and learning units are either incompletely identified or not comprehensive enough, or just too. And that's why it's not systematically coming into this training need analysis. And I often do the checks, and I said, well, have you trained this person? Yeah, I've trained him into this new AIG, VDA, FMEA core tool. I said, okay, what is his job function? Is it now he's a process engineer? I said, can you please show me the job description of a process engineer? And then you won't find anything about FMEA. Strangely enough, I must say, it's a good thing to train a process engineer in FMEA, but it should talk to your learning units in your required competencies to make it a system. Otherwise, it's just an individual gathering once per year. Do you have something? Do you need something? And HR becomes an administration office, but they should actually run the show as a process owner. So we need to help these people and grow them teeth to not stay a toothless type.
Yeah, empower them. This is very
and empower them to chase the departments and said, listen, come also to this next, once you have the learning units, basically.
Hans, sorry, I was going to mention that's so detailed, but you mentioned briefly earlier, this should be one big exercise to set this up, identify each role in an organization, set this up, and have all your learning units specified. And then it's a case of updating it, right? Because it seems like daunting to if you had to be able to prepare this for an entire organization. But if I understood correctly, it's a big job, and then updating and maintaining.
Yes, but once again, Taryn, just remember, you do this once for every job post in the organization, and then you do this update if there's any new requirements, new standards, new state-of-the-art methodologies are coming in that a process should actually find and gather to be considered to be implemented, and then reviewed, and then also incorporated into the job posts that should actually work with that skill. But yes, I totally agree with you. It's a once-off, quite time-consuming process, but not crazy. Okay. It's just that you bring this magic triangle together of department, HR, and quality from the quality system side that the framework requirements that are also needed to be known in all the departments and people working there. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I think you were going on to something I wanted to ask, which was whether there are actually specific clauses in ISO, and I think I saw a flash of ISO requirements in front of me. So whether it's ISO or IATF, what are the specific clauses?
Look, well, one of the problems is there is a specific clause in ISO 9001 that you won't find in the IATF. And this is also something that I've picked up over the years since 2016, since the 9001 requirements are no longer incorporated in the IATF book, which was the case in the previous version. So you had all the relevant requirements stipulated in one book. Now you look at two books to look at IATF, 9001 plus the IATF. The majority of companies works predominantly with the IATF book from the automotive guys. I noticed that. So they're not really having the focus on the 9001 requirements, which are just as relevant for any third-party audit when you go through an IATF. So this is a particular 9001. So where it already says that the organization shall determine the knowledge necessary for the operation of its processes to achieve conformity of product. So basically for every job post. All right. And this knowledge shall be maintained. We spoke about that. And also when addressing changing needs or trends, let's say TSACs, cybersecurity, all those modern things like that. Where is the process to gather that well in time so that we don't run behind the wave, but riding the wave like a surfer? That's the key. So it is already an requirement, and if we don't have that, the necessary additional knowledge must be required, must be integrated in your process. And 721 in the 16949 shall establish and maintain a document for identifying training needs, including awareness and achieving competence. And what is this competence? I put this down for you. Competence is defined as the combination of related abilities, knowledge, and skills that enable a person or organization to act effectively in a job or situation. This is what we need to understand. To gather a training does not necessarily mean you're competent now. It may support you on your way to competence, but that's basically what you need as per the requirement. So with a training, you're not necessarily competent, but it's a supportive tool. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think what's also very important to understand, because I just came back from Europe, as you said, and there I found with a very, very important OEM that wrote one of our clients a finding who said you have not been formally trained in one of these customer specific requirements. Mm-hmm. And wrote him a non-conformity because they couldn't present the certificate. And I said, hang on. This is an invalid finding. And I said to him, I said, let's read the book carefully. I said, training, and I shouldn't even be saying that, Terry, and we shouldn't even be saying that as a training organization. But this is just a true fact. Training per se is not a requirement. It's one way of gaining skills and knowledge to become competent.
Yeah.
If you go that way through experience or self-learning or any other way of gaining that skills is a valid approach. So the training per se is not a requirement. You cannot write you a finding for not having a training certificate if he has had experiences for the last 15 years applying that customer requirement. He just never had a training. He just does it in practice. It's fine. So he says, how do you prove to me that you're competent? I said, my friend, this is your job to find out. You must engage with this person and ask him some questions about this methodology. And from his answers, you make a judgment whether he sounds competent or not. but you cannot require a certificate per se. So also very, very important to understand, but we need competence throughout the organization, which is not related only to that job-specific tasks and competence. We have to operate within that framework that we call a management system, which is currently too much shouldered by quality department, which is a dilemma. Let's put it that way.
I think it's a topic covered over.
So there's also the regulations on.
Yeah. Now, so we've established now, going through what training units are required, what are the actual clauses that relate to this, but how does somebody now take it from there to do a training needs analysis?
Yeah, let's go there. So, of course, once you have those learning units nailed down here, and this is also hugely important to understand now, you can identify to what extent a person needs to be competent for a specific job. And in this particular case, that would be a 1, 2, 3. 1 would be a basic knowledge. Number 2 would be profound, and 3 expert. Let's put it that way. And the actual is a verification against these learning units, which should be done also in a team approach, okay, to see where you actually stand. And this is basically hugely important because you should then also run a very specific KPI, which should be managed by HR, which I would call an employee qualification index. Because the relation between targets and actual, this is just an idea, you can do it in any other way, with 61 total points that he should pull versus 24. And you might look at this, you would run out with an EQI of 39%. Guys, and now you would say, this is very low, but I'm telling you, I nearly guarantee you, if you comprehensively break down the learning units, you will be shocked how low your starting EQI is. And it shows every time when we do audits that this competence in too many different areas, may it be IATF requirements or internal system documentation requirements or customer specific requirements, core tools, and stuff like that. So this is why we're losing heavily those points. So if this is very comprehensive, you will run apparently into a very low EQI. And I don't understand why not many organizations run away with such an EQI. And because remember, if you look in a management review where the top dogs sit together and the top management and stuff like that, if these guys would get an information that you have a very low employee qualification index, which actually generates a high risk because these people are working in their job without any supervision. That increases the risk of being non-compliant to customer-specific requirements, to things requirement, which pops up all the time in any case, in your customer audits and in your third-party audits and stuff like that, and customer complaints and stuff like that. So it pops up in any case. So, but it doesn't ring a bell because most of the companies, what they feed into the management review is that we have planned 25 trainings this year and we have conducted 25.
But were they relevant?
But what does that tell? What does it tell the MD? That if my team, Taryn, you know that if you report this to me in my management review, that only tells me that you guys do what I pay you for. Nothing else. But if you get,
it's actually, sorry.
But if you get a number in that is related to competent fields that he needs to have to do the job, it rings a complete different bell at MD level because it's a risk for the organization.
Yeah, that's
And
exactly
this is
what I want to say. And this is employee, but this kind of indexing, it's saying people don't have to be subject matter experts for that particular role. It's giving you scope for like a basic and intermediate, the subject matter expert requirement. And you can take these measures from an individual level to a department level to an organizational level. Surely you can aggregate these.
Yeah, that's basically what we have here. Look, this is EQI just from an engineering department. And this is real stuff, huh? This is a real case study from a real where we started to implement this on a comprehensive level. These are apparently just the names or the how do you call it? The initials.
Yes.
Initials. And you can also put this down into the organizational level, you know, so you can compare different departments to one another. What we find out, typically the quality departments are always on par, and they're always right there or even exceeding the target.
Why is that?
That's simple to explain, because those additional requirements that are dealing with is part of their job. So they have it a little bit easier because their job related task is also related from the framework of the IATF, from the customer requirements. So they're always on top of that. They know the most about them. Consequently, their training needs is based on that, and that's where they run away. This basically, guys, shows you that we leave quality, the whole responsibility of systems and customer requirements. That's actually the proof in the pudding. What we see that quality department is the driving force for management systems and customer requirement. Problem.
And it shouldn't only sit on those
Yes.
shoulders.
But if you present a statistic like that to a managing director, and it said, now guys, this department here is running away with 45%, and they are operating in the key accounts here, not knowing customer requirements, or not enough, let's put it that way. That's a risk, because these guys are carrying the requirements into the organization, to the launch and engineering department. But engineering is also not much more on top of that. And they are brilliant people. The brilliant sales guys, they're brilliant engineers and all that. It's just not enough, folks. You cannot just simply work in your side of the job. It's just process connected. We need to consider different requirements that are not related to the job. They just need to be applied in your department. And that's where the issue comes from. That's why we have a lack of competence in every department on so many levels. Not necessarily on the core competence for the job itself, but that's not enough. And this is where I say, it's not enough to do the right things. We also have to do the things right.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
That makes total sense.
Well, I would like to do so.
Hans, can you maybe wrap this up for us in a summary of what this, process should entail?
Yeah. Look, basically all the slides combined that we discussed now on a very high level process, if you want to it could look like that. And I've given you already a green, yellow, red rating from all the experiences that we made for the last 25 years around the world. There's no benchmarks. Well, we need to identify all the job posts you have in your organization. This is basically what everybody can tell you through their databases and whatsoever. Let's give this a green. No worries there. Then the areas to determine the required competences is not comprehensive, is incomplete and too generic. So be careful that you don't leave this up to HR by themselves or department head or even the two of them. Just bring your quality in. Because everybody is operating in this framework of the IATF. You might not like it, but you cannot run away from it. Especially the process owners, you cannot run away. So this is where I see a huge room. And then identify the learning units to support also HR to make it their life easier to find the right training courses, you know, online or public from the training providers. Then run the Delta score. Okay, this is where I showed you, he needs a 3, but he's on a 1, so that's a Delta. It's a Delta score. And then run that EQI KPI. It's really a very valuable, useful KPI to see how is the qualification level, which is not only the skill, but also the experience in the implementation. That's what you need to consider in that review. And that's why you get a very low EQI when you do this comprehensively. And still nobody says these people are not qualified. They're top. But it's not enough. You need to operate in the business system. Do it interface. And then identify those needs, those training needs, then create the budgets, whatever you need. But once you have those EQIs, you know where you have to bring the EQIs forward. Because you say who is running behind. And if you connect that with a risk assessment, you know exactly where you have to put the foot down. I want to call it that. And execute the program and verify the effectiveness, guys. This is hugely important. This is super red. This is super red. And it breaks my heart how much money that companies just invest in training and development. And then we're just not taking enough care and control as to how the learned content is effectively implemented in the organization. The problem. And last but not least, what is when there are new trends coming, new ways of working, new state-of-the-art methodologies, requirements, remember TSACs, automotive spies, information security, cybersecurity, enterprise risk management. There are so many that comes in here. How do we identify that? Of course, now we know it's the process owner's duty to do that. But we need to provide also some time to do those investigations. Because you cannot ask them to do that during weekend when they should spend time with their family and friends. Okay. And then of course, if there is new trends, then you got to feed it in. This is the updating of the required competences. But other than that, it's a pretty straightforward one, but we're just ticking the boxes too quickly. And we have to empower HR. HR is currently really, in too many cases, a toothless tiger because of the losing control and being too dependent on what the department heads say. But you own the API. That's very dangerous. You want to be in control of that. And those learning units and those Delta scores that we just discussed will help you, and the KPIs will help you to chase the departments and run with your KPI. That's what it is. Yeah, this is how I would summarize this whole training.
I'm pretty sure some of our attendees today from HR might be very happy to hear this and the empowerment they need in order to achieve some of these.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Thank you, Hans. I was just wondering, in terms of budgets that get restricted, how do you create an approved budget, that big question always. How do you see organizations prioritizing? Do they go first for the departments or the employees with the lowest scores? Or top up the ones that are close to a good score? What kind of distribution do you see there, or is it just two different?
The distribution is pretty accurate. What you see, that we are generally on a very low EQI.
Yeah.
Okay. The risk management, which is actually part of the missing competence that we observe all the time, is to identify the clear risk in the support process, which has the highest impact on customer or costs, impact on the organizations. And that's where you need to fire up. This is where you need to get all in. Let's put it that way. But I want to tell you something, what you asked earlier. One needs to understand, and I think Ancona has done its homework for the last 4 years. What is the future of learning?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm making a very, very straightforward statement here. Because we are still in Machiavelli, victims of Machiavelli. Machiavelli said, people do things because we've always done it. But where is the change? Has anybody ever looked into how does a training concept look in the future under a quality management system 2.0 in a digital world? There is one thing for certain, and the data are in. Management must no longer believe that it is a management responsibility to identify a training need for their employees. It's not going to fly. Yet we do it since 100 years because we've always done it that way. But the future is going to look different, and I will tell you this: the management responsibility is not to take control and tell people what you need to be trained in. We need to visualize for the employees certain career path possibility. In other words, if you want to become a quality engineer or a process engineer or a CAD designer, okay, these are the learning units you have to go through to get there. And then I leave it up to you. If you're keen, if you're motivated, if not, then you stay where you are.
Yeah.
That's the future. The responsibility to climb has to be given back to the people. There's still too many times when I do a training, so occasionally, when I say, well, why are you sitting here, young man? I said, I don't know. My manager told me to come here. I have no idea what I'm doing here. So the future will be different, okay? And giving the responsibility to the people will be the way forward. It's going to be a rough one, especially when the Generation X is coming now. So it's going to be interesting times. Yeah, to answer that question.
Awesome. Thank you, Hans. We're actually moving on to Q&A now. As I know, I threw my own Q&A straight there, off the cuff. I've got quite a few questions lined up, but if everybody doesn't mind, I got one in a private chat. If you do have questions, please send them through on the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, or you're welcome to also use the raise hand function if you want to go on video and speak. But the first question I received from Anonymous says, they're asking or say, automotive, but in automotive, and in my experience, about 30 years, we always keep training going because we have to. For example, we had an audit finding needing PSCR training. So we did that in shutdown. We were shut down for a few weeks. Isn't this good enough? That's the question. Isn't that good enough?
Every training effort you do is good enough. You just need to understand, does that learning unit fit to the responsible person that for which it has been identified? If you then identify in your Delta run a gap, consequently, and you decide to send this person to a training, there's nothing wrong with that. But according to your PDCA circle, you need to understand after the training has been conducted, the PDCA doesn't close. And this is where you got to be very careful, because many people come back home and then they get pulled away. There's another project coming in, and there's a customer complaint in, and there's everything, and the priorities get shifted and shifted and shifted. So he's in this hamster wheel, if I may call it that, back in the day-to-day life. And he often doesn't even get the chance and the resources and the time, even by management, to implement what he could implement. And this is where the PDCA circle closes. And this is where I want to warn everybody. We have very significant data in that there is not enough control, measures, and focus on as to how training content that has been gained in a training class or online training, whatever way, not effectively implemented in-house. And so the organization doesn't become the beneficiary. So it boosts the market value of the individual employee of yours that you've trained because he's got just another certificate in his book. But the organization should be the beneficiary. Look after as to when they come back and said, okay, where's that verification, how that has been implemented effectively? Not taking place enough and it's really got to be very careful with that. So you cannot check the box and said he's happy with the trainer and the training material and I can use this at home and stuff like that. That's Machiavelli, guys. That's what we do because we've always done it that way. And this is really how we try to get away to have a certain proof to an auditor, how we verify the effectiveness of a training. We cannot be serious anymore. You got to stop this nonsense. The effectiveness starts with the effective implementation, not how happy you were with the trainer and the training material and all that, and the accommodation and the hotel and you name it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Question, yeah, I'm guessing it's when we were looking at the aggregated KPIs. Shouldn't the sales department be the department who knows most about the expectations of the customers?
Should they lead? Should they lead what?
Shouldn't the sales be the department who knows the most about the expectations of the customers?
I think to say that sales knows the best about the expectation of the customer is a very wrong misperception. And this misperception is started because they are the voice of the organization to the customer. They have the biggest exchange of it. But if you look into projects, maybe new projects or maybe engineering change projects, so when sales does all the communication and gets all that, that's very technical. But very little to no understanding in the customer specific requirements. Very little to none. Okay, so you mustn't confuse best knowledge of customer expectations on the technical side of the drawing, CAD files, process verification, so that we can do an RFQ process. That I would agree with. But there is much more, and I elaborated on that. There's much more than the engineers and sales guys need to understand, only that there is a database where we have the customer specific requirements. They also need to review and understand the content of that. And I just, a practical example, I just run into a client and I said, are you for this and that OEM? And said, are you applying this customer specific requirement for project management? And they said, we don't know. What do you mean you don't know? It's a customer specific requirement. Those are the ones that are related to the management system. So you're very firm with the technical and the process related project technical information, yes, but to the customer specific requirements that are related to the management system, they didn't even know. So later they got an audit finding for not applying that and said, we didn't know. So you got to be very careful and not confuse. I would agree with this individual that raised the question that they have the closest communication, but they need to close the gap in the knowledge of customer specific requirements, which later in the project bites the launch organizations and the zero lab when the auditors come in. So don't take that for granted that they know the best and the most about all the customers. I would challenge.
Yeah. Makes sense. A question from Manny. And I don't know if you might know these numbers. How does an EQR case study compare if you had to look at South Africa and the EU?
Interesting. That's a very good question. Interesting enough, one would think that, yeah, we're sitting in South Africa here right now, that we are significantly behind Europe, for argument's sake, simply because of the high qualification standards and stuff. One would like to believe that, but or the United States or in Asia. Asia is pretty much advanced because of the drill. Okay, Europe and US does the shortcuts with customer requirements. Wants to do that often, and don't get me wrong, they all do brilliant jobs. But what we found is here, especially in Africa, the OEMs have a very effective supply development program, which is not happening to that extent in Europe. I can tell you that, because OEMs only mingle with tier one suppliers. The tier one have not an efficient approach into the supply chain, tier two and tier three. And that's where it's fading away. All right. So it's on a high level in South Africa. I can tell you that. Consequently, they're not running behind. But if you really build this up, wherever we build this up comprehensively, you have a pretty comparable picture with a very low starting EQI. So I couldn't preference anybody. But what is also significant that the quality departments are always the front runners, which is explainable, and I think I elaborate.
Yeah, thank you. We're about to lose Marion. Hopefully she's still on the call. Marion Abbott from Doncor Recruitment actually posed a very interesting question early on. What we find often in the industry is when we receive a job spec, especially for engineering or industrial roles, most HR individuals have to constantly refer to the line managers for information regarding the vacancy. Even simple things like abbreviations used to describe different functions. I fail to understand this, as they should surely work hand in hand.
I could not agree more.
Absolutely.
More, yeah. That's silo versus process approach and process management. We're still too much defending, you know. It's not my fault, it's somebody else's fault.
Yeah.
Yes, but that thinking process, I support 100%. It should be a team approach and part of early process integration. Let's put it that way. Elsewise, it's going to bite you at the end, as you rightfully say. So I could not agree more.
Yeah.
But you're right. Push back. Find your voice.
Absolutely. Just want to answer for quite a few questions here. Yes, we will be sharing the recording of the webinar and the slides. They'll be available on our blog and our podcast by Friday this week. A couple people are just messaging to say thank you. They need to leave. We've gone over time a little bit again, Hans. We always do. Thank you.
This guy, thanks for coming.
Yes, I think it's another statement, honestly, that you're totally going to go, yes, simply where the HR department will definitely never achieve all of this alone. The support from management teams and cross-functional synergies is always vital to achieve this as a project. Otherwise, ... Yeah, great.
Good. Fully agree.
So, Tilly, a question here from Jacob. When a new project is launched and new equipment or specifications are established to release a product, what is the time required to develop a training plan and communicate the knowledge? In my case, VW states in their formal queue that projects are 48 months and the supplier is selected in month 33 prior to SOP.
Well, if you look, when should it happen? It's if you look, and I think you referred to Volkswagen, right? So the formal queue is one thing, but if you look into projects, you would look into the Volkswagen QP&I, which basically refers now to your RGA or MLA approach of VDA standard, okay, which is a synchronized project management tool, which is synchronized to the PEP, which is running at the OEM. And from those criteria, that entails also the training and qualification in all the relevant MSAs. So if you're early in the phase or later in the phase, let's say you're running into MLA 5 into 6, okay, this is where your validation and approvals take place. Of course, your quality engineer should understand the VDA approach for parts approval by using the specific databases beyond, in this particular case, or Volkswagen or Mercedes-Benz uses not SQMS anymore, but PIA, which is a new database. So in that phase, later in the project, you should then have all the qualifications, of course, to handle and upload the right documents and produce the right documents according to the standard. And at the beginning of the process, you need to understand already that MLA or RGA, the VDA standard, is the driving vehicle for that project for Volkswagen. Okay, so your project teams, your engineering teams, your sales teams should be fully aware that this is the customer specific requirements. So they would have to have those skills early in the phase. And then when you see all in these MLA phases, the early integration of the suppliers, I believe this is what you were also referring to. So the early involvement of the suppliers and cascading down those customer specific requirements, not only on the product like SCs and CCs, but also the customer specific requirements. That's the driving show when the suppliers must come to the party as well. So to answer that question, as of when, there's not an exact time. I think it's related to the task along the project management by using this RGA or MLA approach, which is required by folks.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully that answered the question. I hope it was clear.
Did he give thumbs up? It's very important for me. Did I answer the question?
I'm hoping so. Yes, I think so. Let us know. A question from Israel. What are the main challenges these days for organizations, staff managers, and plant managers for maintaining the commitment with support team and therefore the know-how of the companies? What are the main challenges?
Well, the first thing we need to understand is, have you ever thought about as to why top managers never are part of a training program?
No.
Maybe they know everything already because that's why they're top managers.
Really?
But it's actually a complete violation against the IATF requirement. So of course, you also have to identify, a delta run for top managers and MDs and plant managers in the same level. And they must also come to the party. but often in most of the cases, you never see them in any training program. Maybe because it's not opportune, because I'm the top dog. I should know, or that's what I have people for. So that's a misperception in itself. But yeah, what was the question again? The second part of the question.
What were the top? Sorry, I'm not managing these questions. Well, answered. 1 second, I'm finding it. What were the main challenges these days for maintaining the commitment of support teams and therefore the know-how of the company?
Of support teams? What is the support team in this particular case?
Israel.
I heard everything, but I'm not sure if I understand the question.
What are the main challenges these days for staff managers and plant managers for maintaining the commitment of support teams and therefore the know-how of the company? For example, quality logistics, RRHH.
So what is the challenge to maintain the commitment to train these people from a top management level side? Is that the question?
Yes.
Look, I mean, most of the organizations do have a training budget to whatever extent. So we don't identify cases where organizations do not spend money for education and qualification. I couldn't see that. But to do the right investment in the right areas, I think we elaborated on that, and of course, in times like the times we are in right now, where money gets scarce and liquidity is getting stringent, and we mustn't look so much on the OEM and the tier 1 level, but there's a supply chain below the tier 1s, 2, 3, and 4. That are not getting investments from governments to also the tier 1s not, but the OEMs do. So yeah, we do see losing commitment, or not in general commitment loss, but where they pull the plug and said, let's stop all training activities right now, even on tier 1 level, just to dive through these times. I have no reason to believe that this is a general commitment against qualification and training from these people, but more a temporary decision to say, we've got to stabilize the organization right now to dive through. That's why it's going to be a problem than training, logistics, or any other department.
Yeah.
No, I think the commitment for training is generally there. Just the amount just varies, but generally there's no indications that companies are not committed to training per se.
Mm-hmm. Next question from Settlement. So actually first a statement which I laughed at a bit. Top managers, especially top management and middle-level management, people in organizations do think they know everything. They just need a certificate, not real training. So they don't join seminars, training programs, etc. So top management cannot manage their organizations according to standards. What do you think about this problem?
Yeah. It is what it is. That's the same experience that we do, and I often even issue a non-conformity when I do a third-party audit. And they do a training here and there, but then it's coming back to the old thing, so it doesn't really make a difference. I think the key for that is you must understand. Only because you are in a top management position doesn't mean that this individual or person doesn't have certain insecurities and even self-esteem issues. And then I'm saying this from a psychological standpoint. And it might often not feel insecure if I go into a training. Do I open, what would people think about me? That I don't know, that I'm not, is it real opportune for me to show signs that I don't know? And that's why. So you would be interested. There's a variety of different reasons out there. The right approach to convince and encourage these people, I always find the most effective way when I'm involved in consulting projects, because I rein these people in. And you will be surprised. We from Ancona have a variety of training modules that are made specifically for executives, like IATF 6949 for executives, really focused and pinpointed for this target audience, where I have a different possibility to tell them what's actually the whole thing around, to understand. So to encourage, also with the right arguments, I find the most effective way of breaking that situation up. But often the organization is just not pushing back, is not finding their voice either and accepting the situation. And that, of course, doesn't lead anywhere. So on the one side, he's stuck, and I don't want to open my insecurities and my lack of knowledge in certain areas. The other ones is not coming with the arguments, so nothing is moving. So you have a but situation. So you also need to find your voice and push back in a professional manner and explain them and come forward and encourage and bring them in. I personally find that most effective. And we've done it before.
And I've noticed when you do those executive ones, so it may be like a full day workshop, and you've tended to do them in-house, and it's a group of senior managers. So they hear.
They enjoy that. And they enjoy it.
Yeah.
No, they enjoy it, flat out. Yeah.
And they don't need heavy detail of every single aspect, but at least then it's an effective day. I know you've run quite a few.
Yeah. But these guys cannot cry in the organization like other employees, But let me tell you one thing: men don't cry because they are weak. They just cry because they needed to be strong for too long. And the top managers are carrying a lot of stuff with them. I can tell you that much. That you have no idea of. So be fair, be nice. Also upstream, downstream, of course.
In general.
Yeah, in general.
So Hans, that's the end of the questions, but I think you're going to like this last statement to finish off the day from Rudiger. Hopefully I said that correctly. I support all of your statements 100%. I'm an auditor in the automotive industry, and these topics come up in almost any audit I perform. Thanks as well for the explanation of the standards. I was even on the team writing IATF 16949. You hit our intention spot on.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for the feedback.
So
I probably know him anyway.
I think so. I think I just maybe pronounced name very wrongly.
Let's see. We'll check the list. All
That
right.
wraps up the webinar for today. Thank you so much, Hans. Thank you to everyone who stayed on the line despite us going over time. I will be in touch by the end of this week with slides and recordings, etc. Please feel free to distribute. It actually helps the KPIs for this one-person marketing team. The more you click and the more you share. So thank you. And I will also include links for our upcoming webinars. Next month, we have one basic TSAX awareness webinar. And in October, Hans and I will be speaking around customer-specific requirements. So if there's nothing else, thank you very much. Thank you again, Hans, for your time. And see you soon.
Thank you very much. Cheers, guys. All the best.
Bye.